In 10 years in the Congress, I must admit that I have been involved with a number of very controversial issues. Certainly immigration was one. But nothing I ever dealt with was as volatile as the Islamic issues that you have just posed. That is to say, to what extent have we become Islamified in the United States, and to what extent is it happening throughout the world, throughout the Western world? I raised the issue in a number of different ways, and the response from my colleagues was one of horror that I would actually do so. No one wanted to talk about this. They were more willing to talk about immigration, if you can imagine, than they were to talk about the Islamification of the United States. It is happening. It's happening because of a couple of things. First of all, from my point of view, this country has succumbed to the cult of multiculturalism. It is a cult. It has captured the minds of many, many millions of people in this country, mostly academicians and their charges. And because they are committed multiculturalists, because it is somewhat of a religion, you cannot possibly then pick out any other group in the society that is a minority at the present time for blame or for criticism. It's impossible. It goes against the religion of multiculturalism. Okay, it's one of the commandments, and they can't violate it. And so, therefore, Islamification is allowed to proceed fairly unhindered. Europe has already, I think, sort of drunk the Kool-Aid, if you will. You've got the Archbishop of Canterbury calling for a two-track system of English law and Sharia law. You've got Catholic schools inside England, Catholic bishops having parochial schools provide foot baths and other accoutrements for purpose of allowing Islamic students going to parochial schools now, Catholic schools, this kind of freedom. You've got, I think it was the Scottish Boy Scouts I read about just the other day, who have changed their motto and changed the pledge from one that says, at the end of it, and for Queen and for God and the Queen or something, to Allah, and thrown out the Queen, thrown out any reference to a Western God. This is the Boy Scout, Islamic Boy Scouts in Scotland. It's and all over the United States. We've got the malls being built with special rooms for prayer rooms for Muslims. We've got schools telling children that they have to experience for a week or two what it's like to be a Muslim and fast at Ramadan, and all this bizarre stuff that, if, of course, any of it were done for the purpose of advancing a Christian religion, it would be thrown out of court. It would be banned, and the courts would immediately stop it from proceeding. So this is changing American society. It's changing Western society. Western civilization is truthfully at risk. There's no two ways about it in my mind. It is almost a death wish we have, it seems like. I spoke at American University the other night. There were 400 or 500 students there. The thing that got them most furious with me was when I suggested that they should enjoy Western civilization. When Western civilization is, I presented it as having something of value, the rule of law, for instance, individual rights. They despised my comments. They went crazy, yelling and screaming.
The Muslims did?
No. These were just, they were students of various backgrounds, I guess, but these were part of the cult of multiculturalism, and it's impossible for that cult to accept the possibility that this is a good place to be, and they're confounded by the fact that today, as it has been for 200 years, if given the opportunity, everybody comes our way. Nobody goes from the West to, let's say, Pakistan for a better life, right? Now, when this is really a dilemma for cultural relativists who say that there are no differences. Well, really, yeah, there are, and ours is a much better society, which is evidenced by the fact it's empirically provable. Most people in the world go one way when they leave wherever they are, and so this is annoying for them. They can't. This is a very difficult concept with which they have to deal.
What's it like in Congress when the media presents? On the one hand, we've had 8 years since 9/11, going on 8 years since 9/11, and so the notion of global jihad was presented, and the importance of counter-terror was presented, and now Obama goes in and proceeds with a measure of not only appeasement towards the Muslim world, but with a Muslim background and Muslim heritage. The mainstream media has attempted to whitewash his background and heritage. What happens to the war on terror now, and how do legislators deal with the very important counter-terror intelligence which you're presented with, and how are you able to act on it when the public is being mollified against it?
Well, Congress deals with it by saying that by minimizing the issue of the role of Muslims in our society, and squashing it down to the activities of a few people who they would call terrorists, and they try to distinguish between the two. See, so but they don't realize that, in fact, the real threat to America is not one that is that we where we confront armies. It's the threat is to the culture itself, and that is being attacked in schools and in churches and around kitchen tables, and that's the real enemy from their point of view. That's where they have to go. That's the place of the enemy. That's where these ideas about nationalism and patriotism reside, and that's where they're going to attack it. That's where they're going to try to develop it. And so for the Congress, it's not it leaves the Congress in a way able to ignore it for the most part and say we're only going to look at those people who might be, quote, terrorists, and that's our job, and nobody can complain about that. What they don't understand is that there is an attack on the culture, and it's not just by guys who drive planes into buildings. It's by dedicated Islamists.
What about the corporate and political sponsors of this fundamentalism or radicalism of the West's mosques?
Well, the mosques and the schools are primarily funded by Saudis and the Wahhabis, the Wahhabi sect, and there's a lot of discussion as to exactly how much we've been able to influence the Saudis to stop doing that. They have claimed that they won't do it anymore, but nobody's sure that they have stopped. It's pretty difficult to figure out, but that's where most of the money comes from. But the largest mosque in the world is being built now in London. The most popular name for a male child in England is Muhammad.
But surely you're not opposed to Islam as a religion or as a faith. What's your?
I do not think that. I mean, am I opposed to it? No, I'm certainly not. But I must tell you that I do not know whether it is compatible with Western civilization. If you are a dedicated Muslim, then your charge, your responsibility, is to advance the faith through, blood and the sword if necessary. But and you can do it any way you want. I mean, you can lie, you can proselytize, you can do whatever you need to do to advance the faith. And it is not a faith. Sharia law, for instance, is not something that is compatible with the Constitution of the United States or with democratic principles. So something's got to give. Something's got to give. That's why I say that, if you're dedicated to it, I mean, there are millions and millions of pretty secular, non-secular Muslims, who marginal.
Non-religious, you mean?
Yeah, non-religious. Excuse me. They're just like many Christians, Christian in name only, certainly. So, and I don't think that it matters to them that there are laws against polygamy or against wife beating or against female genital mutilation. But there are millions more who, if they are in fact dedicated to Islam, understand that this is a temporary stage here that we're in, and that they're in a place that they can eventually change. Just will take time, and there are ways to do it that are not just confrontational on a battlefield. There are ways to do it inside your culture.
How do you feel about the Obama administration's appointees, ranging from Robert Malley to now is it Chaz Freeman?
That's a mixed bag. Some of them are okay, some of them are lousy, but it was intriguing that his first call to a foreign head of state was where? Abbas. And the first interview he gave to anybody in the foreign press was to Al Arabiya,
Which is the Saudi satellite channel.
That's correct. So that, I think, is intriguing to say the least. And the fact that, do you remember during the campaign when he flubbed up about how many states he'd been in or was going to visit or something, and he said, I think I've been in all 57 states?
Oh, right, 57,
Yeah. Never made much of it because, of course, he could say it. Had Sarah Palin or before that George Bush had said something like that, it would be constant, every day. You would see it on everything. Well, Obama said he'd been to, or was going to all 57 states. There are 57 Muslim states. Yeah.
I thought everybody was just confusing it with Theresa Heinz Kerry.
Right, no. There are 57 Muslim states. That's what he was confusing it with. So, draw from that whatever conclusions you want to.
What do you think about the media depiction, the media's acceptance of the discredited Hamas from the Muhammad al-Dura days, from the experience of the fabrication and Pallywoodization of the news that comes out of Gaza? What do you think about the media's swallowing of the Hamas line?
There's something that's happening. It's throughout the United States. I have seen it now in the Congress. I mean, for a long, long time, Jewish Americans did have a great amount of influence in the Congress of the United States and probably state legislatures all over. I mean, they gave a lot of money. They were politically active, and they were pretty much connected to the to Israel emotionally and the rest of it. And so Israel had a great deal of support. That has changed dramatically in the Congress. It's not there, and it is part of this multicultural phenomena. I'm telling you that, first of all, numbers play a great role in this, and there are a lot of places, especially Michigan and others, where the numbers of Muslims have grown dramatically, and as a result, their views in the Congress are being advanced. And what's fascinating to me, what's more interesting to me, frankly, than even the media, because the media is predictably anti-American and certainly pro-multiculturalist, so it's not surprising they would act that way. But something like 65% of the Jews in America voted for Obama. This is very, very bizarre. I can't figure it out for the life of me. I mean, if that isn't a death wish, I don't know what is. And so that one is more perplexing than even the media is.
And what do you think of the media's treatment of Israel vis-a-vis the Gaza?
The treatment of Israel in the media has become much, much more negative over the last several years.